the other part of flying is in general, that's going to cost you five, six, $700 more. The interesting thing about flying is you would think because you're traveling with a group and you're bringing a lot of money to the airlines that they would give you a great discount, but it's not true. You actually pay more.
Which is crazy, which is unbelievable to think about. But, because you would think it would be the opposite. Oh, well, I'm buying in bulk, so therefore it must be better. But it's not. Unfortunately, airlines get to do pretty much what they want to do a lot of times. And so we have to follow their rules and follow their systems. Have you noticed anything, Bruce, I know that I'm seeing groups that are coming in and they're asking about going to traditionally Disney. I'm seeing more, though, that want to do Nashville, but maybe not as far. And I'm seeing things like Boston, but they're concerned about expenses because Boston can be kind of expensive depending on the time of year they go and whatnot. So have you seen anything on your side?
Yeah, I would say that Nashville has become like the most popular place outside of
It's
Disney
crazy.
and Universal.
Yep.
I think the options in Nashville are amazing.
Well,
as
yeah,
far
because
as
you can do like that,
performance opportunities.
just that Ocean Away thing.
Yeah, Ocean Away Studio for kids to have an opportunity to record where,
Like Taylor Swift. Right. Like, I can't even believe that we can have access to that for them.
Right.
But yeah.
And at a reasonable price too. It's actually less expensive than using the RCA studio, which is also a great place where Elvis recorded thousands of years ago. But that space is very small. This space can hold up to like 125
Well, that would be
band
great.
members.
Yeah, if we have bigger
You could do
groups.
choir. They get the opportunity here also to put on the headphones and really experience it.
Oh, like a recording studio.
Like a real
recording studio.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And the
cool.
best part of that is the tracks. You get every track.
So they belong to you at the
They
end.
belong to you. You can do with them whatever they want. So one of our clients recently just used it for his theory class, and they broke apart the whole
That's really cool.
studio recording.
I didn't even know you could do that. That's
Yeah.
pretty
And
awesome.
it was like 125 tracks. Yeah.
That's a lot.
And what was even more interesting is the kids that were really interested in recording, they could come into the recording studio and they could see what the guys were doing.
Well, that's good for kids that want to do music tech, as opposed to just
Right.
performance, or if they because I think that's one of the best parts about this is learning about the kids that have, or showing them different opportunities career-wise that aren't necessarily, you don't have to just be a teacher, you don't have to be a performer. There are many other ways that you can incorporate music into a career, or you can even become a travel planner and help students to travel when they're doing it, which I think is probably for me, obviously, I think that's pretty cool because that's what I do. But, I think the other thing I'm seeing too is Orlando is always popular, and I think it's that iconic picture of the band coming down Main Street with the castle, and who doesn't want that picture? But I hope people learn too that there's more to Orlando. I like telling all my friends that, Orlando has so much more to offer besides Disney. Obviously there's Universal as well, and they have a new park, and also talking about SeaWorld. There's iDrive, which is chock full of stuff. But there's also like alligator encounters and nature preserves there that, in areas that a lot of other parts of the country don't have, like the Everglades and things like that. So
Right.
I'm seeing that as another option.
Kennedy Space Center.
Kennedy Space Center.
Great place to go to educate the kids.
Mhm.
And it's, an hour and 15 minutes away from Orlando.
Yep, and it's not too far from Cocoa Beach.
Right.
So you could kind of tie that together if you really need that beach time. Well, especially for some of our groups in the north who like to come down and get some warm time for,
Right.
break up their winter a little bit if they can. So.
Yeah. And we're able to, have a party on the beach,
Right.
which is great.
No, that's super fun.
Yeah.
I would do that.
Yeah. But, for the people that can't afford to go to Florida, because it's a good flight at cost.
Mhm.
There's expense to it. It's harder and harder to drive to Florida for the groups in this area and in the Pennsylvania area. That's a 18, 20-hour drive. A lot of the bus companies will no longer do that drive. So it's not a cheap trip to go to Disney. So there's, in this area, we could go to Nashville. We could go to Pigeon Forge. It might be a little bit closer. Pigeon Forge has great opportunities for groups to perform on the stage.
Yeah, I have a lot of groups that have fallen in love with Pigeon Forge and didn't even realize they were going to love it. Like they're like, what is Pigeon Forge? I'm like, wait till you see.
Right.
You know, it's more than just Dollywood. They have a lot of opportunities, like you said, for performances.
Yeah. Shows every night. There's great places to eat. There's great shopping areas.
Well, and there's those like activity centers in the mountains where they can do like rope climbing and more engaging or physical activities too. So, which is always good if you've been on the bus for a while.
Right.
Get them
There's
out.
also a nice parade in beginning of May. There's the Smoky Mountain Parade.
Ooh.
So
I don't even know if I knew that one. Oh, right at the beginning of May. There you go.
there you go.
See, I'm learning
Best
something
time
too.
to travel.
It is a very good time to travel. Beginning of May is a very good time, in case anybody wants to know.
Right. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But we do a lot of trips to New York City. That's another
Yes.
great place. And in New York, we can do something as simple as a clinic or a performance. Not a lot of great indoor performances, but indoor performance for us, we can get them at the Empire State Building. A choir can perform in the Empire State Building. We have another space in town that we can get indoor performances for smaller groups. And then great clinics, working with people for NYU and Juilliard and Columbia
And Broadway.
and Broadway, right?
Even Broadway performers who like to do the clinics and explain how they get into the business. And they do everything too, like in terms of auditioning, how to audition, what does the industry look like? You don't have to be a star. You could be a stagehand. You can look at lighting. You can do sound. Do all of those things, which I think, again, it's a really great opportunity to learn
Right.
music careers, not just being a star on Broadway.
Right. And then there's other opportunities as far as just seeing the sights, taking tours of Central Park or the Broadway scene or the music scene or Harlem or going to the Apollo Theater.
Right, and seeing history.
Yeah.
You know,
history of music.
iconic history of music, right? It's not just about Broadway when you go to New York. There's so much more. Jazz at Lincoln Center, the Met, opera. There's so many
Carnegie
options.
Hall.
Carnegie Hall.
Right. And there's this great art program that I've taken a couple groups to. It's called the Graffiti of New York. And so they take a tour of graffiti throughout New York, but then they get to experience creating their own graffiti.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
And not getting in trouble for it.
And not getting
That's even better. You don't even have to worry about that part. That's cool. I know there's another place too that I had a group do, which was a bagel experience. So they can actually experience baking a New York bagel, which I think is super cool. And it's something that they'll say it's in the water. So they might not be able to replicate it when they get home, but it's really probably a really good experience. And I know, well, I mean, you get to eat what you make. So
right.
who doesn't like a good nosh in New York besides John's Pizza, which is also very good.
Yeah, well, there's numerous great places to eat in New York.
Oh, for sure.
There's the New York delis.
Katz's,
Juniors,
cheesecake.
Gotta have cheesecake.
Well, that's usually what I do.
Yeah,
That's usually my first
that's
stop.
kind of my meal.
Yes, it's usually my meal, especially if we're on a tour. It's usually what I actually eat as opposed to food, but it's okay. It's
But,
it's worth
there's
it.
the simple things like Hard Rock Cafe, which
Sure.
are great student-friendly.
Planet Hollywood has a new.
Hollywood.
They just reopened, so that's pretty
Oh,
cool.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
For years, when we started doing these trips, everyone would go to a music festival.
Mm-hmm.
And the groups would go and they would perform and they would compete against each other. And it really got to the point where every kid was getting a first place trophy because there was no competition.
Which seems very disingenuous,
Right.
in a way.
I've found that, directors really are just looking for a musical experience. They don't have to have the festival. They don't even need the trophy anymore. Although I'm happy to create a trophy.
Absolutely, trophies.
How big do you want it, right?
Absolutely, you can access trophies anywhere. You don't have to go to a festival for sure.
Right. But the clinic opportunities for these kids to be able to sit down and play their music that they're playing every day of the week and play it for a university professional or a professional composer or writer, and they're playing their music and getting to experience what that conductor is saying to them about their music and how they could play it more expressively, or that you're missing this note, or what have you.
Yep. Or the or the emotion that he was going for or that they were going for. If they've composed it to be something passionate and the students play it flat, it's a great opportunity for the students to learn directly from the source who
Right.
actually created the music.
Yeah, and they're so easy to set up in New York or wherever,
Anyway,
because all you just need is a room and the percussion, or if it's a choir, you don't need anything but a
but a
piano.
piano or a
Which is
tuning, or
great.
even sometimes just a tuning fork.
Right.
It's wonderful to see, and I think it's really neat to see the students change when they get into those clinic rooms, because they start out as an ensemble at the beginning and they have their interpretation, but in the time frame that the clinician works with them, to hear them change, hear their sound change. Even I've seen choirs that just stand up straighter. They just look like they get it more, and they have this understanding, which emboldens them, and I think it just adds to their performances. And I've seeing them at the Broadway clinics are amazing, I think, because it's an actual rehearsal room. Like, it's where somebody like a Kristen Chenoweth actually went to rehearse for Wicked, or it's where they actually create those moments that we know now as iconic moments on stage in these rehearsal rooms, and they're the same rehearsal rooms that our students get to use for their clinics. I think that that's magical, because you've got to feel it, and you do when you're in those rooms, you feel that energy coming off, and I think that that's pretty impressive for the kids. And I know their teachers get a lot out of it, and it's all stuff that they can take back with them to their schools, and also share with maybe students that couldn't make it, and they get to benefit from some of the
Yeah,
side.
and what's really great about that is most of the time they're actually having this clinic with someone that's going to be performing in front of them that night,
Later that night, yep,
right?
which is
We're
even
pulling actors in, and that maybe the star actor, or maybe just on the swing or what have you, but they're getting that experience, and then when they go to the show, they can connect with that person.
absolutely. It's magic, and it's exciting. It's exciting to watch the kids actually experience that, and the teachers as well. I think the teachers also get the benefit of maybe hearing some teaching points that they might not have considered, or a different way of saying is the same thing, just hearing it differently. It's like, oh, I should use that next time I'm trying to teach that method to a class.
Right.
So everybody benefits from being in that room.
Right. We also have some great experiences beyond that. I've often had an actor come out after a show and talk to the group about how they got there, what they did to get there. You know, all the different things that they do on a daily basis to keep their voice in check.
Exactly. Maybe they don't talk for the first 3 hours of the day, or whatever their particular thing is. And to do it in the theater where they just got off stage,
Yeah.
and then to talk to the students, I mean, it doesn't really get much more first person than that, unless the kids were on the stage during the musical, which obviously they're not going to do. But, it's a pretty impressive experience. If you're at the Nederlander Theater and all of a sudden somebody comes literally off the stage in makeup and talks to you, that's pretty cool.
No.
I get a lot of requests for people that want to go on a big trip. They think they want to go on a big trip, and they're like, and we want to fly, and we want to get there by flight, because I don't want to have to deal with the bus for 18 hours to Orlando from the Philadelphia area. And I have to gently explain to them that there are benefits and negatives to both. There's things that you're going to experience that you might not experience with flying that you would with busing, and vice versa. And it really depends on the individual group. It's not for me to tell them, but I think the idea of the fact that with flights, you have to deal with things like cancellations and flight delays and other extraneous factors that we can't always manage for. And so, you take a certain risk, I think, when you say you're going to fly to your destination, especially if it's not just you and your family. You're talking about 50 students plus 20 chaperones plus equipment plus all the flags if they're doing a marching band. And when I talk to people about that, they're like, oh, I didn't even think about my stuff. I'm like, yeah, you're gonna, it's not just like you and your family of 4 and your carry-ons and you're ready to go. You have to think about that. And also the time it takes to then check those people into the airport. Like, how long is it going to take you? You might think, oh, I can get there 2 hours ahead. Okay, but maybe you might need to extend that a little bit when you have 100 students and maybe a lot of them haven't traveled before. A lot of students, their first time traveling is with their school trips, their class trips or their band trips. So it's important, I think, for the people I talk to explain that to them. Like, it's not as smooth as you might think, but getting on a bus is a lot easier.
Yeah, and you're right. If you're going to go to the airport with 100 kids, you're going to need to be there 4 hours in advance,
Probably.
easily 4
Yeah.
hours in advance, because checking all that equipment in, especially if you're a band or
An
string orchestra,
Mm-hmm.
it's even more. Um, and there's great. It's great to get there faster.
Sure.
I would love to get there faster, but you still have to rent a bus when you get there.
Exactly. You
You
can't
know,
fly all the way
there's
through
still that
Orlando.
cost that you have to rent the bus when you get there. And the other part of flying is in general, that's going to cost you $500, $600, $700 more. The interesting thing about flying is you would think, because you're traveling with a group and you're bringing a lot of money to the airlines, that they would give you a great discount, but it's not true. You actually pay more.
Which is crazy, which is unbelievable to think about. But, because you would think it would be the opposite. Oh, well, I'm buying in bulk, so therefore it must be better. But it's not. Unfortunately, airlines get to do pretty much what they want to do a lot of times. And so we have to follow their rules and follow their systems. And so it makes it a lot harder. Whereas, when you hire a bus company, you say you need 3 buses, they'll get you your 3 buses, and you tell them when to show up, and they show up. And, and it's not as weather dependent, which is a very big sigh of relief for a lot of our clients and for us when we're planning too. So, and also your equipment can go with you.
Right.
You're sitting right on top of it underneath that bus, which I think, there's a lot of security in knowing that. I think for directors in particular, when they're like, oh, good, at least I know where my stuff is. It's not like, well, I put that beautiful string bass underneath the plane and I sure hope it makes it to our destination. And you get a little more peace of mind, I think, with traveling by bus. But by bus, it's going to be longer.
Right. Well, statistically, just going back to the flights, they say that group travel is 3% of all airline booking. So that's why they don't really give us any kind of break on it.
Because it's such a small part of their business. Yeah.
Yeah. But, the other part of being on a bus is it's not always safe to be it's not always safe to be driving at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Correct.
Right? So you have to trust that your bus company has well-rested drivers that can drive through the night. And we're finding more and more that the bus companies aren't doing the overnight drives.
Well, that's what I've experienced. It's, trying to get bus companies to agree to that is almost impossible, which is sometimes frustrating for some of the clients I talk to, because they want to do that. They're trying to save money from flying. So they're trying to do the overnight, but then they can't because the bus company. So you end up adding a night. You end up having to spend the night somewhere, right?
Yeah. So typically you have to stop in Fayetteville, North Carolina for a night to make that drive down.
Yeah.
Which is a lot is an extra cost for you.
Absolutely. And so then you have to weigh that. Is it good? Is it bad? But I think that it really just depends on the group. And, that's what we can do, is help them to figure out what is best for their group. Because if they are flying, do they have to send a box truck with all their equipment? Is that another cost? Is that a rental cost that they're going to experience? Or do they already have one for their school music program or something they can use from the district to take care of all of that? But then you need volunteer drivers that are going to drive that equipment truck for you. So is it something that you want to just be a caravan with your buses, or do you want to send the truck ahead of time? I've seen it work very successfully both ways. So it's not impossible, but I think it's just more things that they have to consider as somebody's planning a group trip like that. But that's what we're here for.
But I have to say that's a great solution. If
for sure.
you have a box truck, because you think about what you save in baggage fees, especially if you can put your luggage on that.
It's
because
huge.
these days, even now, Southwest doesn't give you free baggage, right?
Yeah.
So now, on average, a person's going to pay $100 or more for baggage.
Well, especially the baggage they're going to have in oversized instruments.
Right.
I mean, a sousaphone is not tiny, and you can't stick that in an overhead bin, so that's going to be extra cost and space in the hold. Do you want to pay that?
But one of the things Peak has figured out is, for those groups that are going to Florida or California, that sometimes we can rent some of the large percussion.
Absolutely.
Large percussion, large instruments.
String basses, tubas.
Right.
Yes.
Cellos even.
Yep. And especially especially that percussion. I mean.
Right. So that saves them money, but, there's costs for that as well.
Right. So it's just, where do you want to pay? Where is it going to be, and how much are you willing? And some groups have a larger budget and can absorb those costs better, and some can't. So how can we figure out the best way for that group? And I think that's why part of why I like my job is I like that puzzle piece part is figuring that out and helping groups do that and coming to a reasonable solution for everybody. So
We have found some great partners in other education systems in California that have also been able to give us
yes.
equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Or we have a group that travels every 4 years to California, and they always have a indoor guard. And for an indoor guard, you need a special floor.
Right.
And we've always been able to borrow a special floor. So that's something that we're able to provide for a group.
See, and it's problem solving. And that's a lot of what we do is problem solving.
Sure.
I always like talking to the directors about their chaperone situation because every school handles it just a little bit differently. And I think one of the best trips I ever was on with a group was that all of their chaperones were also teachers in the district. And it removed a certain element of conflict that parents might have, because parents are, of course, they're there with their student and they want their student to be having a good time, but sometimes it's hard for separation to happen at that time. So I think it's really neat to watch an entirely academic staff be the chaperones on a trip because the students also react differently. They behave differently because they know they could also get in trouble back at school because their English teacher is also on the trip this time. So that's kind of a funny thing that I think happens to watch their behavior change as opposed to, oh, well, that's just Becky's mom and she's going to be nice and she always gives me stuff when I get home. So that's kind of neat. But I think it's important that, directors remember that their school district probably has a requirement in terms of, is it one chaperone for every 10 people, for every 15? I'm sure it depends on the age group. If you've got younger students, you probably want more chaperones than older. But I think that it's important for directors to remember that when they're considering the cost of the trip in terms of who pays for those chaperones, is it something that does the group cover the cost? Sometimes districts say the chaperones aren't allowed to pay. So then you have to figure out how to raise enough money to cover the cost of that. And also, is there a dedicated medical professional that they require? Some school districts require that. So you want to make sure that there's a nurse and it could be a parent. It doesn't have to necessarily be an employee, but I think it's important to remember that it's great to have that medical professional on your trip just for things like EpiPens and any kind of things that pop up, somebody that can handle it right away. Nighttime meds, morning meds, just keeping track on hydration for the kids during the day, especially if you're traveling and when it's warmer, and just keeping tabs on that. So it's important. What's good about Peak, though, I think, is that we send a tour specialist on every tour. And that's part of the deal. So you don't have to think about the logistics of your trip in terms of, is the restaurant going to be ready for us? Is the hotel ready? Getting the room keys, getting the boarding passes at the airport or any of those things, handling all of those logistics so that the teacher and the chaperones can actually experience the tour with the students.
Yeah. What it's all about is the teacher being the teacher.
Right.
We don't want
Right.
to be the teacher. We don't want to be the chaperone, but we want to make sure that everything runs perfectly for them.
Absolutely.
Never have to stand in line, never have to waiting for that bus. Where's that bus driver? Never having to deal with any difficulties. That's what we're really about.
Right. Just make it easier. And that's what we do.
And our in-house staff is awesome.
Yes.
We have a great sales team. They sell the trip. And once that trip is sold, it moves over into our tour coordinators who run that whole trip from soup to nuts. Everything's put together.
They are booking everything and making sure that everybody's contracted correctly, and then following up to make doing the double triple check on everything. So our staff is a bunch of rock stars. We've got some really great people, and they all really care about the why, which is doing something really positive for students through travel. And that's what we do and why we do what we do. And we all have that same desire for that achievement. And the folks in the office don't always get to see what happens in the field, when the students are experiencing it. But I think all the pictures that we get and all the feedback that we get helps them to remember that, yeah, it's a pretty cool experience. And what they're doing might feel, boring at times because it's a lot of paperwork and phone calls and emails, but it really does make a difference. And we're really lucky we've got such great people here.
Yeah. And the tour specialists get the best part of it.
Yeah, they do.
They get the end result. They get the chills from the kids doing a great performance. We're just acting normal.
Exactly. You're just having fun
and all that, seeing all that great stuff.
Yeah, it's full circle. Everybody, I think, in the circle gets to do a really important part.
We have this really great program that we use for registration, and the registration is something that parents can sign in and register the kid for a program. and the teacher has a back end to be able to see what's happening in that registration. So they can see how many kids are signing up, how many kids are making payments. They can also use that software to set up their rooming lists and bus lists.
It's amazing. It is so convenient, I think. Um, I know the teachers love it because they can, like you said, they can see the registrations as they're coming in. They can see who's behind on payments, who's on time. They see if anybody's struggling. And maybe there's a student who's struggling a little more that they're letting on, and they could maybe intervene and intercede earlier to help them financially. If it's a scholarship or grant money or a little extra financial support, they can kind of spot that early enough to maybe help make a difference, which I think is super wonderful for those kids to be able, because nobody wants the kid to miss out on a trip, right? And of course, the teacher also has another added or incentive of wanting to make sure that they have a balanced ensemble. So they don't want just their clarinets and flutes to show up for the trip. They're hoping that the tubas show up too, to make sure they have that. But the registration software, I think, is so convenient. They can do it from their phone. They can do it whenever they think of it. They can set up automatic payments if they want, so that way they don't even have to think about it. And also too, they can input all of their health and safety questions and issues too. So if a student has a particular issue, they can share that, and we can have that on file so that we can be prepared for them when they're on their trip. I think that gives parents definitely a sense of security and peace sending their kid, because a lot of times, like I said, this is the first time a lot of these students have ever been away from home or traveling, so their parents want that little extra security, and that helps with that too. I think that the idea of building all those lists is great too, because I don't know a teacher who wants to create rooming lists or wants to do that, because they're busy teaching, and that's why the software was created too, and that we can share this with our clients is a huge benefit. It's also good too because they can share that registration link with their friends and family. So if people want to help maybe defray the cost of their trip, they can say, hey, here's my link, grandma. I can, if you go here and make a payment, you can make a payment right to my trip. And that's a big deal. That can help you cover the cost of your trip pretty fast.
Yeah, and for teachers and for booster programs, it has this ability to put in fundraising monies. So you can go into the back end, you can upload all of the, Johnny made $50 and Sally made $20, and all that information is uploaded by the booster parent or the teacher. And once they send us a check, we release that money into each person's registration. So it saves them tons of time. It saves us tons of time because
Sure.
we're not doing all the inputting.
Which is so huge, because then we can focus on other things like the itinerary and the vendors and making sure all that's taken care of. And, so we can just put that on the back burner. And I think just the ease of access too is worth saying again, just the fact that they can do it wherever they are,
Yeah.
whenever, so if you've got a parent who works shift work, it doesn't matter. They can make their payment at 2 a.m. There's no, deadline like that. So it's very convenient, which is wonderful.
Yeah. And one of the things that we provide is the ability to buy travel insurance. And you can purchase the travel insurance on the software. So they don't have to worry about finding an outside organization to do their
To do it.
travel insurance. Right.
And that's a big deal. And, people might think that insurance isn't important or it's an extra that they don't need. But I think the global pandemic proved to all of us that you never know when things could happen. And so buying insurance is super important. And the best part, I think, is that student group travel insurance plans are usually pretty affordable. It's not usually a huge cost, that's going to be incurred by the traveler. So it's definitely worth the extra to cover yourself.
Right. The other benefit that Peak provides is our travel app.
Oh yeah, it's Group Spot.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the travel app is kind of like a Remind on steroids.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, it's
It
huge.
has the ability to send out notifications to the students. They can use it for checking in on the bus. They could put pictures on into a gallery.
Yep.
Parents can have a separate login so they can see what's going on the trip.
That's great.
We can also send messages to the parents. Sometimes we let the parents do a little chatting, which can be good and
And bad. It could go either way for sure. I'm sure some kids probably don't want to hear from their parents and others do. So
Right.
it's a great opportunity. But I think just that idea of that instant communication. If something has to change, if there's a traffic jam and you're going to be late to the next thing, it's a great way to get that message out right away. Or especially like on the return when parents are picking their students up, and if there is a traffic delay, we can make sure that, hey, parents, just so you know, there was an hour delay. It's now going to be a 9 o'clock pickup instead of 8.
Right.
And that's huge. And also for students, to help them, it also emboldens them and empowers them when they're on the trip. They get a little more freedom because they have the connection there, so they can explore a location a little bit more and know that they just need to look back at the app and know, oh, right, we need to be at the fountain at 2, for the picture that we're going to take. And it's just a super convenient way. And I mean, who's not on their phone all the time now anyway? So
Yeah.
it's, get them where they are, and that's what we're doing. So
Right. And it's great because we can upload documents. So we can
Yes.
upload the highlights of what's happening in a specific town, something you might want to learn about going before you go to Nashville that we can put in there.
Yep.
We can put bus lists in there. We can put rooming lists in there. You can upload your passport. So the nice thing about that for us is if for some reason we're in Europe and you've lost your passport, we can actually pull your passport out of that. And that is
Convenience.
no, I was going to go with the safety and security part. Your what's the word I'm looking for?
Privacy.
Privacy. Right.
Are you looking for privacy?
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a great privacy.
Feature built into it, because then we can make sure that their identity is being protected. It is a safe server that we're using. It's not trackable. It's just a way for us to keep it all together so that if something does occur, we can go to the consulate and we would have a copy right there on the app, so we don't have to worry about, do we have that paper copy and who has the folder and where are they and all that. It's right there, and it makes replacing a passport easier. Not easy, because it's never easy, but it would be a lot easier with that information.
And for the directors, they can also upcharge for, maybe they're selling T-shirts and they can use that to actually sell their T-shirts.
Absolutely.
We find that a lot of our groups that use it continue to use it once they leave our tours as well for their daily life of being a music teacher.
That's great. And that's something, why reinvent the wheel? If it worked for your trip, you can just hang on to it and keep using it.